I Ought to Be Punished, sung by Tom Woottwell, Edison Record. I had such a row with a copper last night, 'twas my fault I'm led to suppose. He threatened to take me away to the station, they say I punched him on the nose. I ought to be punished for hitting that copper and causing that copper to come such a cropper. For using me fist, well, I must be a brute. I ought to be shot for not using me boot. Next door where I lived there's a young ladies' school, the nicest girls ever you saw. Last night on the quiet to look at those girls, I bored a big hole in the door. I ought to be punished for looking and peeping and watching those ladies retiring and sleeping. I'd no right to look, and to stop it I tried. I ought to be kicked for not going inside. Last night I was broke, so I went in a shop. Oh, the thought of it makes me dirty. Oh, the shopman was out and temptation arose, so I stole sixpence out of a till. I ought to be punished for stealing that tanner. I ought to be kicked in no uncertain manner. I pilfered a mean paltry sixpence I did. I ought to be shot for not sneaking a quid. I took me wife with me once into a pub, and a stranger came into the bar. He winked at me wife and he tickled her ribs, and he said, "What a nice girl you are." I ought to be punished for not interfering while he made love to her right in my hearing. Fancy me standing him calling her dear. I ought to be pinched for not drinking his beer.